Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We are in Joshua chapter 4, and we're going to be starting in verse 21 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, we're finishing this series of lessons on the stones of memorial. They are in Gilgal now. Gilgal, again, is about 5 or 6 miles west of the Jordan River, and they Joshua tells the men to go in and get stones, and they are to place them in Gilgal for a memorial, of what God has done of bringing the children of Israel through the Red Sea, and that this memorial is supposed to last forever. Supposed to last forever. Well, at least until the end of history, and that's the purpose: is to remind the generations to come of what God did, and that the God that they serve is a great and mighty God. Now, we're going, like I said, we're going to finish this series of messages in this lesson, and we're going to be reading verses 21 to 24. And it says here, And he spake unto the children of Israel, saying, when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What do these stones mean? Then you shall let your children know, saying, Israel came over this Jordan on dry land. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan from before you until you were passed over, as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up from before us until we were gone over, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that you might fear the Lord your God forever. Now, there are many things in our life that we have as memorials, things that remind us of events in our past. It could be a flower, a book, a tree, a house, a vacation place, maybe a ring or another piece of jewelry, or even a letter. These memorials can bring back good memories, but they can also bring back bad memories. Cemeteries are filled with gravestones that are memorials to those who have passed on. As we pass through a cemetery, we ask what this stone speaks of, the one who is under this stone. But the stones in our text have a different message and a different meaning that what many of our memorials have, than what our memorials have today. Because these stones here in Joshua chapter 4, they are a reminder of the greatness of God. How many memorials do we have that speak of the greatness of God, of God's forgiveness, of answered prayer, of God's faithfulness, and of God's great patience toward us? Our life should be filled with memorials that bring us back to a God-focused life. The stones of these memorials preached the duty of remembering and the danger of forgetting. Listen, when we have memorials in our life, maybe there's a place that you go to, a place where God has touched your heart. He changed your life. Maybe there's a book that you read, and when you read it, God, the Holy Spirit, moved in your heart, and he changed you, and he did a great work in your heart to make you more pure unto him. Maybe it's a person. These things are memorials to us. And these things are, these memorials preach to us every day that we are to remember. And the danger of forgetting. Don't forget these memorials. I'm not saying we should worship the memorial, no. But don't forget the memorial and what God did with that memorial in your life. When the children of Israel left Egypt and they passed through the Red Sea into the wilderness of Sinai, God did not instruct them to erect any kind of a memorial on the other side of the Red Sea. And why is that? It's because God doesn't want us to meditate on our past life of bondage and of persecution and of death. God doesn't want us to have memorials to our old life. God doesn't want us to set up memorials to the things of this world. Old things in our heart are to pass away. Behold, all things are become new now. The more we meditate on our old life without Christ, the more our sinful heart will be drawn back to that old life. And that's exactly what happened in the wilderness. The children of Israel, they didn't like the wilderness so much. They wanted to go back to the old life in Egypt. They started liking the condiments, the onions and the garlic. They started liking those things, but they forgot about the bondage that they were in. And so also, Christians who start meditating about their past life forget about the bondage of sin and the effects of sin on their life. But these stones of memorial are a testimony of the power and the faithfulness of God, who brought us through a wilderness of complaining and rebellion and faithlessness for years of our life, and brought us through into a land where now God is our everything, in whom we trust. No more rebellion, no more faithlessness, no more complaining. Our hearts are set on God and obedience to his word. These stones stand as a testimony to remember where God has brought you from in your young Christian life, and they stand as a warning to the dangers of going back to that old life. Always remember your immature wilderness life brings you closer back to your old life in Egypt. The more we go back to our immature life in the wilderness, then the next step is to want to go all the way back to Egypt, to the old sinful life, the old life without Christ. Verse 24 says, that all the people of the earth might know the hand of the Lord, that it is mighty, that you might fear the Lord your God forever. Now, this crossing of the Jordan River was to put all the nations on notice. The nations in Canaan did notice, and they did fear the Lord, but they decided to fight this God of Israel instead of humbling themselves to this God and to his ways. The Gibeonites made a peace treaty with Israel and were spared, but the Gibeonites did not want the God of Israel. They were only trying to save their own lives. But if any of the other nations in Canaan would have humbled themselves to the God of Israel and turned from their sinful, adulterous ways, I think God would have spared them as he spared Nineveh. But just like our sinful flesh refuses to submit to God, these nations in Canaan didn't, and they were destroyed. They didn't humble themselves, and they were destroyed. And that's how can I say, you would think that people would want to live. The Gibeonites did, and they made a treaty with the children of Israel. But if the other nations would have gone and just said, we give up. We know your God is going to give you this land. We give up. We decide that we are going to make your God our God. I truly believe God would have spared that city and those people. Now, would they have? They probably would have, like the Gibeonites, would have been made servants or slaves to the Israelites, but they would still be alive. And I don't know, maybe they would even be able to still retain their own homes and live in their own homes. But no, the strangeness of the sinful flesh is that it will fight even to the death. It will fight to the death, and we would rather. It would, in a sense, it would rather fight and die than to give in to God. And this is what you're going to see here as the children of Israel start conquering these nations here. They won't give up. They keep fighting. You ever wonder why people at your work keep fighting God, or your family members, son or daughter, mother or father, grandma, grandpa? Why do they keep fighting God? It's because it's the same sinful nature. Their sinful nature just doesn't want to submit to God whatsoever, and it would rather fight God than to give in. All right, we're going to start in chapter 5 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.